Hello, and welcome to the Artificial Podcast with your host, Nick Myers.
Artificial
intelligence,
voice recognition,
machine learning,
robotics,
actionable analytics.
It is Nick's goal to help everyone understand the impact that emerging technologies are having on our lives both personally and within our organizations. Your glimpse into the growing world of emerging technology starts now.
Nick Myers.
Nick Myers. Nick Myers.
Nick Myers.
So, Brett,
Yeah.
do you know that I can actually talk to Samuel L. Jackson right now if I wanted to? Right now.
For the sake of the podcast, no, I don't.
You're right. You don't know that.
Nope.
But how cool would it be, or how cool is it, rather, that I can talk to Sam Jackson?
That's cool. Let's
Well,
hear
you just wait. I'm going to talk to Sam Jackson and ask him about the weather. Hey, Sam Jackson, what's the weather like outside?
Currently, in El Progreso, it's 73 degrees Fahrenheit.
Dude, Alexa sounds just like Sam Jackson.
All right, we're going to have to start that again. Alexa, ask Sam Jackson about the weather.
Come back, son. Right now in Sun Prairie.
How'd you get his number?
87 degrees Fahrenheit with mostly cloudy skies. Today's forecast has some sun and thunderstorms with a high of 87 degrees and a low of 74 degrees.
Nick,
See?
how'd you get Samuel Jackson's number like that? How do you talk to him on the phone?
Well, don't you know, Sam J and I go way back from his Mace Windu days.
No
Yep.
way. You were like, what, 5? It's kind of creepy.
Well, you found out my secret.
Oh, God.
My gosh.
I think we found out Samuel Jackson's secret, too, then.
You're terrible. That's awful. But funny. No. So I actually paid about a year and a half ago now. Actually, no, maybe about 2 years. 2 years ago, Amazon started offering Samuel Jackson's voice to be the voice of Alexa. And you bet your bottom bippy that I purchased his voice for 99 cents. Actually, I think you can get Sam Jackson's voice for free, but if you want the explicit version, you can pay 99 cents.
Well, you gotta pay 99 cents for the explicit version.
Correct, because
Well,
that's what
that's
Sam
way
Jackson
better.
does. If you ever seen Pulp Fiction, you know why you need the explicit version.
Or any
Anyhow.
movie with him in it.
Anyhow, so yeah, anytime I, say, hey, Sam Jackson to any one of my Echo devices, Sam Jackson tells me the weather, sets timers, answers questions. It's great. But I think what's really neat about it is the fact that, well, I mean, I guess Amazon pretty much cloned Samuel L. Jackson's voice and can
Wait,
manipulate it
wasn't
any way they
actually
want.
him?
Oh my gosh, Brett.
What?
No, it wasn't actually him.
Oh, okay.
What?
Well, thanks for playing along. Jesus
Oh.
Christ.
You were
Uh,
that totally went over my head.
as it's on the bottom screen, it's saying your voice can live forever. Voice cloning and the future of synthetic voice. And you think I thought it was real? Come on, Nick.
Oops.
These are
Well, that's why we
freaking
do this.
brains.
Anyhow, welcome to another episode of the Artificial Podcast. My name is Nick Myers, and thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of emerging technology. And of course, welcoming back to the show, the CTO of our company and the all-around ad hoc podcast guest for the Artificial Podcast, Mr. Brett Brooks.
Hello, everybody.
So, to Brett's point, yeah, I didn't play along with his stupid skit, but the whole reason we started off by sharing the voice of Sam Jackson over Alexa is because today, in this episode, we are going to be talking about synthetic voice and the future of synthetic voices, specifically diving into how crazy it is that you can clone your voice and essentially live forever.
Yes.
Which, I guess if somebody had a voice recording, you would still live forever. But you get what I mean.
I want to know how many times Amazon recorded his voice to get the AI to, or the synthetic voice to be that powerful or sound just like him. That's
Well,
pretty damn good.
The good news is, in Sam Jackson's case, though, there is more than enough footage of him on film Or
True.
there was more than enough in film archives for them to use audio from. So I'm sure
True.
it was a combination of them having him read off of a script, but also using his film archive because, I think he's in the running for an actor who's been in the most number of movies or something like that. I know he's paid quite a bit whenever he's
Yeah.
in something.
Yeah.
But dude's been around for 30, 40 years at this point, and he's kind of like Michael Caine. He just pops up in every movie somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But also a testament to how versatile an actor he is. Anyhow, this podcast isn't about Samuel Jackson.
I think of him in Die Hard 3 a lot. That's when I think
Why?
of Samuel Jackson. Just because I like that movie and he's pretty good in it.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a good Die Hard movie. I don't know. I think my favorite Sam Jackson movie is a tie between Pulp Fiction and, honestly, Mace Windu and Star Wars.
I always forget he's in that.
What, Star Wars?
I think of Mace Windu. I don't think of Samuel Jackson.
No, because he did the character so well.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
Correct.
This is not a film podcast, even though
Doesn't
Brett
matter.
and
We can talk about whatever we want.
I'm just saying we can go on and on and on about the life and amazing career of Samuel L. Jackson, but that's not the point here. The point here is showcasing that we, in technology, now have the capability to seamlessly clone anybody's voice and manipulate it to how we see fit,
Yes.
which is a true technological marvel, I must say. And what's even scarier, what's even scarier, plus what's even more incredible, is the fact that really anybody can do this with a working knowledge of AI tools today.
Yeah, it's free, open source. Well, not free, but
Yes.
pretty open source.
And I think the reason Brett and I, there's a couple reasons why I wanted to talk about this, but I think the main reason is because, as you all know, from a couple weeks ago, we did a podcast about the new voice assistant that we built. And one of the main reasons we wanted to build our own voice assistant is because building our own voice assistant now lets us actually create our own custom synthetic voices, which Brett and I both very pro when it comes to voice technology. And we'll probably get on a tangent later about why the future of voice assistants is going to be synthetic voices and not pre-recorded crap voice. Sorry, if you're somebody who uses pre-recorded voice, you keep doing you. Just not about it, and I'll explain why. But having worked with pre-recorded...
Why?
How... Brett won't hold any punches, but we'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, it's crazy that you can clone anybody's voice, and I think the Sam Jackson voice is a testament to that. And I think they also had John Legend's voice at one point. I think Google Assistant had some different voices. I wish I could remember what their voices were on Google Assistant. Maybe that was John Legend on Google Assistant. I don't know.
I have no idea.
But I think it's really neat that they're starting to get celebrities to record voices for voice assistants because it adds a fun novelty to it. Most people are never going to get to speak to Jennifer Aniston in their entire lives unless Jennifer Aniston's voice is recorded and becomes the voice of Alexa or Google Assistant or any voice assistant, really.
Yep.
So that's where I think there's a lot of novelty and stuff in it. Anyhow, synthetic voice. Maybe let's start with what is synthetic voice. Bit of an education sesh here. Why don't we dive into it?
Sounds good to me.
Essentially, I'm not going to go into a big, long definition, but essentially, synthetic voice is computer-generated speech. So whenever you hear the term synthetic voice tossed around, essentially just means a computer is creating a voice. In days of old, you used to have to use a synthesizer to do this, actually. Mm-hmm. Think about some of the old songs where they use synthesizers and they're singing into the microphone and they warp their voice to sound robotic.
Yeah.
That's a days of old synthetic voice. But today, we can have computers just kind of create these out of thin air, which is really neat. So think about, the old Macintosh voice from when the Macintosh was...
I've noticed a lot of the methods they use these days for, the AI algorithms to make synthetic voices are called synthesizers, because it's kind of a fun fact.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. You can keep going.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the OG synthetic voices that exposed the greater public to this concept was when Steve Jobs unveiled the first Macintosh computer back in the 80s, and he started out the presentation with the Macintosh saying, "Hi, I'm Macintosh." Mm-hmm. And everybody's minds were blown. And then we look at more practical and we look at more practical and human-centered approaches to synthetic voice. So when you look at the late Stephen Hawking, for example, of course, his disease kept him from communicating, and his whole life, for the most part, he used synthetic voice to communicate to the world around him.
That's
and
an
of
old
course,
synthetic voice.
yes, and there are people, of course, who have disabilities who still use that technology to this day. And then, of course, we get into the 2000s, and now all of a sudden we have Siri and Alexa and Google Assistant and every other voice assistant out there with synthetic voice.
Yeah, and now these synthetic voices, if you get into the neural synthetic voices, sound pretty damn real.
Now, Brett, explain what a neural
people.
synthetic voice is, because some people may not know.
It's just a more trained voice. Higher
What does
trained
that
voice.
mean?
It's just it was trained more by the computer algorithm, and it sounds better. Sounds more real.
Well, maybe then we should start with how we're able to train these voices. And I think it's interesting to note that most synthetic voices generated by computers still have to record some aspect of human speech, because you're essentially training an advanced computer algorithm or an AI model on how to mimic the person's speech. Like, for example, the voice of Alexa, a real person had to provide that voice. Like the voice of Siri. The voice of Siri is actually trained off of real human people.
Yeah, you can't just make a voice out of thin air. Maybe you can, but I haven't seen one yet.
You can, but it's a lot easier to record it. When you're trying to create the synthetic voice using an AI model, it's a lot easier, of course, to record it first.
I thought about what I was going to say before. To many people out there, maybe instead of synthetic voice, text to speech. That's probably what more people have heard.
Yes, text to speech. That's like OG synthetic voice. Think like what was the old text to speech toy that kids had, where you could type on it, type to speech or whatever.
Spell something.
Yeah, what was that called? You know what I'm talking about?
Spell check. I forget.
Remember, it was on. It was in Toy Story.
Yep. I forget, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's like that's one of the OG versions of text to speech. Where you could just type in whatever on the keypad to the toy, and it would respond back to you.
Yep. It's pretty cool.
But yeah, no. The thing is, when you look at even today's voice assistants, initially, because the quality of the voice needs to be so high, you typically use a real person to record.
Yep.
Hundreds of lines of speech, and then they can put that into an AI model, and then the AI model takes it from there. So, but I think it's also interesting if we ask the question, is it possible to make voice clones of anyone? And the answer is, what do you think, Brett?
Yes, you can.
Yes, it is possible in 2021 to make voice clones of anyone. In fact, there has been a lot of tools, or not have been, there are a lot of tools that have been around for quite a while that accomplish this. The first one is, a tool called Adobe Voco that I actually used to include in one of my talks. I forgot what talk it was, but I would always show an example of Adobe came out with what they call like the Photoshop for speech, where they recorded, I think it was Jordan Peele was at this conference back in 2016, and they recorded his voice so they could essentially mimic and reproduce his voice in real time, and then they could clip his voice and rearrange it in the audio stream, and then type things and make his voice say things that he never said.
Yep.
Which I thought was really neat.
It's really cool.
And that technology has been around for years now.
Scary and cool.
Right.
Because you make people say anything that you want.
Right. Well, like I said, that technology has been around for years.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have Microsoft Custom Voice, which you and I discovered within the last 2 years, which they used to let anybody just use. Now it's behind a wall and you have to submit an application and all this stuff, which honestly probably a good thing. But yeah, Microsoft had a tool where they basically outlined every step on how to create your own custom voice from anybody's voice, which is pretty neat. And then, of course, you have
AW. Azure. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yo, you were frozen there for a second. Well. We had some technical difficulties there. Thanks to Mr. Brooks over here.
I don't freaking know what happened. I was looking at everything else, and everything else was connected fine. It was just the StreamYard.
Such a poser.
Poser? That makes no sense. You're being stupid.
Of course it makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
Anyhow.
Trying to use That's not even Gen Z lingo. That's like our lingo from high school.
Poser?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't hear anybody.
Nobody
Call
says
it.
anymore.
Anyhow, where was I? Oh, yes. I think I was trying to talk about the different services available to make a custom cloned voice.
Yeah, and you mentioned Microsoft,
Yes.
but it's actually on Azure, cognitive speech services.
well, right.
Just
but
same
it's-
thing. Microsoft.
Right,
owns
but
it.
it's still a Microsoft service.
Correct.
Is what I was.
So you're right. I just wanted to be more specific.
And then I was going to say that, you have Adobe Voco, which I talked a bit about, Microsoft Custom Voice, and then, of course, AWS, where they recorded Samuel Jackson's voice, among other celebrities, which you can purchase to have as the voice of Alexa.
Yeah,
So,
purchase.
but the thing with Amazon is they don't really let you do it. You
was gonna
have
say-
to jump through a lot. You have to jump through far more hurdles in order to do it with AWS, and it costs quite a bit of money.
I was gonna say, if you're in the running for if you want to buy a house, you can also just go ahead and buy a
Shush.
synthetic voice.
It's not cheap doing it through AWS, but it is relatively cost efficient doing it through Microsoft. But anyhow, there's a variety of ways to clone somebody else's voice and turn it into a fully manipulatable synthetic voice, which I really think is the future of voice technology and voice assistants. Who doesn't want to be able to just swap, voices to their Jarvis-like voice assistant? I think that would be really neat. But how does voice cloning work? Well, I'm not going to get into the technicalities of it because, one, it actually is far beyond my understanding. So I will just get into the high-level overview of what I do understand about how voice cloning works. So essentially, you have an artificial intelligence model or machine learning model that is capable of analyzing recorded speech and is able to convert that recorded speech to text and somehow piece it all together to create a fully synthetic replica of the recorded voice.
Yes.
Did I explain that properly? Yes. And in order for the model to do this, it needs a lot of lines of both speech and text, right? So it can match the two.
Well, actually, on Azure Cognitive Speech Services, you can just put in the recordings. You don't need scripts anymore.
Oh, you don't need scripts
their
anymore?
Yeah, that's their beta.
Oh, that's
It's actually
cool.
very nice and saves me a lot of time because when I first started learning this 2 years ago, I would have to put scripts in with the recordings to make my own
Yeah.
voices. And I made that standard voice that sounded worse than Stephen Hawking's voice. But now with the 300 recordings, you can just do a long recording or a short recording, and you don't need scripts anymore. It's really nice.
Well, then there.
and it works
See?
just as fine.
So what I just explained changed. So some services you may need to use a combination of text and vocal recording. It looks like with Microsoft service now you just need vocal recording. But even so, the more vocal recordings you have, the better the synthetic voice is going to turn out because the model is able to use more recordings to create a better version of the voice. So it's all done via machine learning and artificial intelligence, specifically deep learning.
And it's so nice too because you can just create your synthetic voice or your neural synthetic voice on Azure's speech services, and then you can just hold that on their server and then call it whenever you want through an API on any of your devices.
Yes.
So
And
cool.
I'll be quite frank, Microsoft does not do a good enough job at promoting that they offer this
Dude,
service.
like I've never even heard of it until I went on there. I'm like, oh, you can totally just do whatever you want. It's so
Right.
It's so free.
So that is in a very basic nutshell how voice cloning works. But yes, I believe there are a couple of websites out there that allow you to, at a very basic level, record your voice and the AI behind it mimics it. But if you really want a well done synthetic version of your voice, you have to provide a lot of recordings to a very advanced AI model that Microsoft and AWS and Adobe currently have. So that is how it works. And I must say, being in voice technology, having worked with both pre-recorded voice and now synthetic voice, I'm on Team Synthetic Voice forever and always. 110%.
I'm on Team Synthetic because you don't have to wait a week to edit your synthetic voice.
Yep, that's one reason, Brett. And
You can
I
literally
think,
just go in and backspace and type in new words and you're done. That's it.
well, and the thing is, I remember I posted something on Twitter about this just to get some feedback, and it's actually a pretty even split between people who believe the best type of voice for a voice assistant is pre-recorded. Well, I guess a voice assistant or a voice application is pre-recorded versus synthetic.
How is
And
that?
because I think up until recently, you got to admit synthetic voices on these voice assistants haven't really been the greatest, especially if you're looking from a developer perspective. Like Alexa, Alexa still sounds, it's good, but it still sounds relatively robotic, whereas Google Assistant, when you're actually using Google Assistant, you have the really nice, human-like sounding voice, but then if you go to develop a Google action, you get that robotic piece of crap voice.
The only benefit or the only excuse people can say these days to use pre-record is it's cheaper, probably. Well, no, then you have to pay
it actually is not.
You have to pay the
Correct.
voice actor.
Not only do you have to pay the voice actor, you also have to pay for the time to write out the scripts and review the scripts, review the recordings.
But think about it. With the synthetic voice, like I was just testing our synthetic voice for like a month, and it cost us $2
Correct.
on speech services. Now, what if like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people are making millions and millions and millions of calls to that synthetic voice? That could add up. Monthly,
I
where
suppose.
you pay the voice actor once for the recording, where the synthetic voice is being called constantly.
I suppose, but then it comes down to what's going to be more efficient over the long term. Like, one of the reasons I'm actively opposed to pre-recorded voice is because, say, you decide you want the voice of your voice application or your voice assistant to be, John Smith. So say you hire John Smith, and John Smith does all these recordings, and you get it into your voice application or your voice assistant, but then maybe 3 months down the road, John Smith has a heart attack and dies.
You'll have to turn John Smith's voice into synthetic voice.
So now you need to make updates to your voice application or your voice assistant, but you can't add anything because John Smith is dead.
Yeah. And then you have to go into the whole like liabilities and stuff about using a dead person's voice. Do they still get royalties to the family and stuff? Like how?
Wait, what are you talking about?
What?
I'm talking about pre-recorded voice. I'm not talking about
Correct.
synthetic voice.
I'm just saying, where's the money go to for John Smith if you keep using his voice and he died? Does it go to the family? Like,
well, how can you use?
I'm
his
just saying,
voice?
if he gets, let's say John Smith is getting royalties for you using his voice, right? Where are the royalties going to go if you keep using it?
For pre-recorded?
Yes, if you keep using his voice, some people continue paying that person for using.
Okay. You're talking about like if it was used for like a commercial or like, different ads or something like that.
Yeah, just
okay.
used.
Well, I'm just talking about it in the context of you're somebody who's built a very robust voice application, or you built a voice assistant using pre-recorded audio files of John Smith's voice.
You're talking about they're screwed because you can't get that voice anymore.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. That is one of my biggest fears of pre-recorded voice. Not to mention, if I ever want to go and update anything, I have to then go back and have that person re-record again.
It costs money.
It costs money and time, and quite frankly, synthetic voices have come a long way, and the way you can manipulate them, I find, is it saves so much time in the long run, and it's far more efficient, and they're getting better. And as technology does, it will outmode this whole pre-recorded voice thing that a lot of people still seem to want to use and prefer. Well, hang on. The argument that I saw on Twitter was there's a time and a place for each. So if you're building a very simple voice application, then sure, use a pre-recorded voice because it's going to be static and not much is going to change. But if you're building something more dynamic, which, in my opinion, if you're building a full-fledged voice assistant or voice application that's supposed to solve a problem, you want it to be dynamic, and you're going to need the dialogue to change, and you want to be able to work and morph that dialogue over time, and you can do that instantly using a synthetic voice and not pre-recorded.
Also, the code is constantly changing, and you can do different inputs and stuff on what people say or what intents and utterances they bring to the conversation, and your synthetic voice can change on the fly with what those utterances are.
Well, and here's the deal. I'm going to be honest, too. When we're using a digital assistant, we know it's a piece of technology. We know it's not human. Mm-hmm. And the human brain is very attuned to picking up sound. And it can very, very efficiently differentiate between an actual human voice or a voice that is not human, that sounds almost human and robotic, like voice assistants do. So I almost find that there's it almost makes me feel uncomfortable when I've used voice applications or voice assistants in the past and I can tell it's a pre-recorded person's voice, because I'm like, wait, the technology is robotic. It's not human. It's a piece of technology, but yet the voice sounds like you were talking to me in a conversation. You know what I mean? Like, you almost kind of want that element of it being just a tad bit non-human and robotic.
Yeah, I'll give you a prime example of what I was saying prior is, say a person gives their name, right? You can have your synthetic voice say, hello, insert name. How are you doing today? Where with a pre-recorded voice, if you want to do that, you have to pre-record every name to ever existed if you want to do that.
Right.
Which is stupid.
Yeah, it wastes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So, again, Brett and I aren't trying to, well, maybe Brett's bashing. I'm trying not to bash pre-recorded voice, because there's folks out there that like using pre-recorded voice, and that's fine. I just don't think it's the long-term evolution of...
It's like we're saying, I like Netflix, but I know there's some people out there like Blockbuster.
Right. I said, what happened to Blockbuster, Brett?
Stupid. Like, you're the past. Get ready for the future.
Well, and I think, there's some people out there who, when you want to create your own custom synthetic voice, that takes a technical aptitude, right? And I think, and of course it is a lot easier for people who don't have that technical aptitude to do pre-recorded, and that's totally fine. But I'm looking at the industry from a 50,000 foot view, and I can honestly say the future is not pre-recording somebody's voice. It is pre-recording it maybe for the intent of converting that into a full clone of that person's voice that is completely synthetic.
Yes. Recording is still going to be around for cloning, not for using those files for production.
And in fact, in one of the organizations I'm a part of right now, we recently started a synthetic voice maybe not a working group. I can't think of what they called it. I think it's like a study group, a synthetic voice study group or something like that. Okay. Just start diving into synthetic voice more on the applications of it, because I think deep down it's hard to deny that that's where the industry is heading. And I think that's what people, I really at the end of the day think that's what people want, especially with the idea that you and I came up with where, imagine one day we have a Jarvis-like voice assistant that assists you in your home. Maybe it'll be Alexa, maybe it'll be Google, I don't know. But just imagine for a second you have a Jarvis-like voice assistant, and say you're like, wow, I want the voice of...
Robert Downey Jr.
I want the voice of Robert Downey Jr. as my voice assistant. So all you do is you go to your marketplace of synthetic voices, you buy Robert Downey Jr.'s clone voice or synthetic voice for 99 cents. Boom. Now your entire house, your voice assistant, your Jarvis-like voice assistant that speaks to you sounds like Robert Downey Jr. Maybe you wake up the next morning and you're like, boy, I want Barack Obama to be the voice of my virtual assistant or digital assistant. You go to your marketplace, you buy his voice for maybe $5. Boom.
Dude, or even like calling these APIs and stuff. I would love to like call an API to like some famous person's voice and then just use it per, how many people are using it.
Right.
Or calling it.
Well, imagine truthfully, and if anybody here was looking for a business idea, this is a business idea, right? And there probably is somebody somewhere working on this already.
Just a server farm of like voices. Just
it would be a genius
thousands of voices.
Business idea, yes, to create agreements with celebrities or influencers or people of prominence, and you create a marketplace of synthetic voices that anybody can tap into.
Yeah, that's what I meant, not server farm.
Yes. Anybody can tap into, and of course the celebrity or the influencer or the person of prominence would, probably get some type of royalty off that, which opens up a business opportunity for them. But, I mean, that's interesting to me. And if there was if somebody's listening here who's like, I really think this is interesting, how do I get started? Well, think about that, because that's a really solid business idea that I wish we could do.
We haven't even gotten into these different languages, too. Like, for pre-recorded different languages, you have to pre-record every single language. If you create a synthetic voice, you can AI train that synthetic voice into a different language.
Correct. In fact, I think a reference I'm hearing is Samuel Jackson's voice yet again in Mandarin or something like that.
That's cool.
Yeah. And in fact, I think Microsoft has another technology called neural text-to-speech, which I also showed off in one of my talks, where it was taking in the voice of the presenter live and then converting the exact sound of her voice to a different language
That's
in real
crazy.
time.
Yeah, they have devices out there that do that. You can speak into it and hold it up, and it'll have a
Right.
synthetic voice speaking a different language for you.
So that's why I'm saying, I'm like, yeah, I get using pre-recorded voices right now for some of this stuff, but it's just not, if you're trying to make it a long-term thing, I just don't believe in it. I don't.
Yep. Yep.
I think
That's
it's
just the hard truth, you know?
I think it's a very outdated way of looking at this industry.
Yeah.
So, anyhow, you do you, but that's my 2 cents on it.
Yep, I agree.
What else? Oh, yeah. When we look at clone voices and synthetic voices, I think an important thing here to consider, too, is what are the moral and ethical implications of clone voices and who uses them? Yeah, I almost think about, like, how we have watermarks to prove that something is real? Like, you look at a dollar bill and you hold it up and it has a security strip, or you have, like, certifications for movies and all this different stuff. When we start moving into a world of clone voices, is like a voice watermark going to be necessary so you know that the voice is fake?
I don't know
You know
how
what
you
I
do
mean?
that. How can
Well,
you do that?
I actually think that's what this working group is looking at, or the study group is looking at, that I talked about.
You know how, like, when you go online to get pictures and they're like stock photos and they have that watermark all over them?
Yes.
What if you had a constant static in the background until you paid for it or whatever, and then...
I'm not looking for a solution. I'm just throwing around the idea of, will something like that be necessary? I think it will be, because imagine you're interacting with a voice assistant or a digital assistant, or say you call in somewhere and the IVR system that they're using, or phone system, literally has a reproduction of a human voice that sounds exactly like another human being. Are we going to want to know if that voice is fake, or do we not care? I'm on the side of, we probably want to know that it's fake. And how do we do that?
Yeah.
And especially if the technology gets good enough to where it is right now, where you could go onto YouTube and, famous actors or singers, you could easily database enough videos and audio files now and dump it into one of these models to reproduce their voice.
I would say maybe maybe just a soundbite at the beginning of like all these audios, like a universal soundbite, like a watermark on a dollar bill, just notify like, hey, this is a robot or a synthetic voice
or something
Yeah.
like that's going to be necessary.
like a bloop. It's like, oh, okay, this is it's a synthetic voice. Okay.
Because if a market like that is unregulated, we're going to be able to make synthetic voices of anybody, and I mean, can't even begin to imagine the implications of that, right? And nefarious actors that want to use that to cause harm or steal, or what I mean.
And
that's why,
yeah,
and that's why I think Microsoft putting their service behind an application wall is a really smart thing.
that is a smart thing, because before, like, I could just log on their website and make something,
Right.
and nobody would know anything about it.
Right. So the fact that I think they started an application process is good, but that's not saying that anybody couldn't develop their own synthetic voice engine, right? But
Yeah.
it's just, again, these are very moral, ethical questions that we often don't think about as these technologies come into existence. It's only when something bad happens that we deal with it, and quite frankly, I'm tired of that. So look at social media.
We'll probably do it again.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, I really would be a strong advocate of a voice watermark or some type of disclaimer saying, hey, or maybe it's like a tone. Maybe it's a tone or something. It would have to be audio-based, you'd think, right? Like at the start, before it starts talking, you hear that specific tone that
Yeah.
it's a fake voice.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. That's what I was saying.
Because otherwise, this is just going to be a frickin' free-for-all. It causes a lot of problems.
Yeah. We'll figure it out as we go.
So that's some of the moral and ethical implications, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with deep faking now, too. It's one thing to deep fake and create a real-life depiction of somebody doing things that they never did before, but then you pair that with voice cloning and synthetic voice. Oh my gosh. Like,
if you get a really good actor's body and actor's face that looks just like that actor and you deep fake it, dude, I've been fooled. by some of that stuff. I'm like, oh my god, it's not
Well,
real.
right. And then think
What?
about adding, and then think about, a lot of the people have to imitate that person's voice, which you could still tell to some degree isn't that person's voice. But then you add voice cloning into the mix there. So
Yeah,
now
start
you
cloning
have
the voice. Yeah,
the deep fake and you have the clone of the voice. So you can depict somebody saying or doing
double
things
deep fake.
right that they have never done before. Like, imagine for 1 second that somebody were to deep fake Joe Biden. So deep fake him so it looks lifelike. And on top of that, they clone his voice. And they hack into all media networks and they run a video of Joe Biden declaring war on China.
Yep.
Like, that's spooky shit. And that's
It is
entirely
spooky
possible.
shit. It's
That's
true, yeah.
entirely possible today.
Yeah. Well, they already deep faked him sleeping on YouTube. He's like on this interview with the lady, but it was actually some other guy sleeping, and they used the sleeping guy's voice to overlay it over Joe Biden.
Of course they
And a
did.
bunch of these conservatives said, "Well, at least Trump didn't fall asleep in interviews." They actually believed it. It's pretty funny.
No.
I'm sure there's a bunch of liberals that believed it too, but it's just funny.
You need a brain to fall asleep. Anyhow.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about Joe Biden.
I'm trying to be mean while also not trying to sound mean at the same time.
I go for it. Who cares?
Anyhow, so yeah, that's some of the things that go through my mind when I think of voice cloning and synthetic voices. What are we going to be confronting morally and ethically? Especially also, like, what if somebody dies and we're able to clone their voice to make it seem like they're still around, but what if they didn't want that? Or, you know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of why I titled this episode, Your Voice Can Live Forever, because with synthetic voice technology, imagine 20 years down the road, a family member dies, but you synthetically clone their voice because the technology is as simple as pulling up an app on your phone, and then you have a home voice assistant. What if your mom died and you wanted to make your voice assistant the sound of your mom, so your mom's always talking to you? Like, that's the crazy stuff that I think about.
They have that filter now. I forget if it's like with TikTok or Snapchat, but you can put the filter over a picture. And a lot of these people are putting pictures over
and
their
they're
deceased
coming
relatives.
to life.
Yeah, and they're like moving their eyes and like mouth and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like that's the first time you saw a past dead relative move their face with that app filter.
See, if that's what I'm saying.
You add
though. It's
voice
like,
to that.
right? That's what I'm saying. Though you add.
Creepy.
I mean, yeah. So essentially, you can make somebody live forever with this technology.
Yep.
Especially even if you deep fake them, you can
Now
do
we
the
just
same
need to.
thing.
Now we just need to record consciousness, and then,
Oh,
then
great.
we'll really live forever.
Well, that's what transhumans want to do.
Mm-hmm.
They want to upload their consciousness into
Yeah, a chip or whatever.
the technology,
Yeah,
the
the
internet.
technology, and then that one show that you watched, I forgot what it's called.
Years and years.
Years and years. Okay.
Yes, because I remember.
Good show.
I'll always remember that show. The first episode, she sat her parents down and she's like, "I have something very important to tell you," and they're like, "Oh, honey, it's okay. Share whatever you need to." And she's like, "I'm trans," and the mom's like, "Oh, we'll support you. We'll take you to doctors." And she's like, "I mean transhuman, not
Yeah.
transgender," and they're
Yeah.
like, "What do you mean you want to upload your consciousness into a computer? That's never happening. That's so stupid," and all this stuff, which I thought was hysterical.
Oh wait, no, I'm thinking of that guy that he died in the car crash, and then he got his consciousness uploaded into
Died
that.
in the car
into that-
crash.
Yeah, the self-driving car ran into the back of a truck. He was a vegetable. Then before he could die, they uploaded his consciousness into the perfect world.
Oh, you're thinking of upload.
Yeah, upload.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but either one works.
I mean, that's not necessarily what transhumanism believes in, but I see what you mean.
Yeah, same concept.
Personally, I don't know if I'd ever want.
I'd like to just die.
I was gonna say I don't know if I could ever do the whole upload thing if that ever became
Nah.
a reality.
Nah, I want some true peace. I just want black darkness for eternity. That'd be
For
great.
those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Upload is a show on Amazon Prime where the whole premise of the show is humans have developed a way to upload consciousness into a digital world when you die, so you never truly die. or your physical body does, but your consciousness
Why
doesn't.
would
So-
I want to upload
So you
my?
become an avatar living in a digital world.
That's why I never understand. But I've never understood about heaven and stuff, and like uploading my consciousness either. Is like, why would I want to keep living and being stressed out and stuff, even if it is a perfect world? I just want to be gone, so I don't have to worry about anything.
Well, I think that's kind of what the show. I think that's kind of what the show is trying to portray. Is why, you know, is our fear of death that great that we're willing to literally digitize whatever our consciousness is to be in a digital type space? I don't know. I think the best part was the way they did it, where they took him to the scanner and the beam like scanned his head and it dissolved.
I did not expect his head to be gone.
No.
His whole head just gone.
And his
Falls
body
like
falls
butt
over to the
naked
ice
into
thing.
the ice bin.
Yeah, and then I remember watching that and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna like this show.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Anyhow. So yeah, back to the whole voice cloning thing. So yes, truthfully, with this technology, you can really make somebody live forever. At least their voice you can make live forever. Which we'll see how that plays out in the coming years. But I think that's all I have to say on synthetic voice.
We pretty much went into full depth on that. We're pretty good.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm really trying not to be mean when I talk negatively.
None of
about...
us are meant like here to be mean. Like
No. Well, I'm just saying,
fun?
like,
Yes.
I don't want anybody taking it the wrong way when I be like, I hate pre-recorded voice. It's so stupid. Blah 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 blah. I mean, I do think that, but
And if you're offended and you take it that way, you're wrong. So
thanks, Brett.
I don't care.
Anyhow,
Cancel
so
me.
yeah, if you're somebody in the voice tech space, listen to this, and you haven't really tried experimenting with synthetic voice on like a really deep level yet, I would recommend you look into it if you have the capability to, because in my bones, I feel that's where voice technology is headed over the long term. So might as well jump into it now. And I know that's definitely going to make us stand apart as well with what.
Oh hell yeah! Like by the time like you're able to use SSML too. If people don't know what that is, you can change so many different things about the synthetic voice, like the pitch of it, the tone of it, the spacing. You can put in commas and stuff and like breaks. You can so many different things you can do with SSML. It's pretty cool. Where you cannot do that with pre-recorded voices. So
Nope.
just more benefits.
I suppose with the
ammo that you
pre-recorded
have.
voice, that you get the natural intonations and pitch and tone.
True. Damn it. But I can't say on the pre-recorded voice he does intonation that I don't like and I want to change that. Can't do it. I have to have him re-record it.
Yes.
So, checkmate.
Fine.
Checkmate. I like how you're defending pre-recorded voice now.
I was just
You're being
I'm
devil's
just
advocate,
saying.
yeah.
I was being a dick. I'm just
You're not
saying.
being a dick.
Well, no, I was poking fun because you're like, oh, with SSML you can adjust the pitch and tone and all this stuff, and I'm like, but wait, with
There's
somebody's human voice, you can just do that naturally.
Naturally. Yeah, but man, I love synthetic voice. It's been very cool working with it the past almost 3 years now, 2.5 years.
Shorter than that, probably say about a year.
No, because I started coding with JavaScript onto Alexa 2.5 years ago. Remember I made that first.
Don't reveal
Alexa
your
skill?
secrets.
Remember that Alexa skill I made about
Yes,
you?
yes, yes,
Fun
yes.
fact about Nick, I like this.
Don't reveal your
Stupid.
secrets. Brett's been programming for a very long time.
Yeah, 10 years at least.
Hey, some people just have a natural skill for stuff, and yours is computer programming, so
It's
Brace
fun.
that.
What can I say?
anyhow. That's all I got on synthetic voice. Anything else you want to add, Brett?
Nope, I am good to go.
If
We
you
talked for a bit.
If you have an Amazon Alexa device and you want to try out Sam Jackson, I believe you just got to go to the skills store and you can activate it and you can buy the explicit version. It's pretty fun. I'd recommend doing it if you haven't yet. Anyhow, looking ahead to some future episodes of the Artificial Podcast, next week I will have another guest interview. I'll be talking with Ben Kovalis of Art AI. And what they're doing at Art AI is pretty cool. They're actually creating computer-generated artwork
Yep,
using-
I've used it, some of that stuff.
using an AI model. And I'll tell you what, I'll of course I'll talk about all this with Ben, but having seen some of the artwork they're able to produce, you would never know that a machine is creating these works of art. It's pretty cool.
Have you seen them? Like the person will make like a child drawing of a tree and a stick figure of a human and like a child drawing of a house, and the AI overlays it and it looks like Da Vinci painted it.
Yes.
It's so cool.
And that's the thing. It's like somebody, one would assume that, the computer's being creative, but no, the computer is just really good at recognizing patterns and things, and it's just reproducing what it feels is the best pattern to...
Yeah, and then no one drawing is the same either. Just
right.
It's so cool.
Well, there was that website where it was an AI algorithm that used a general adversarial network that was creating brand new human faces out of a bunch of pictures.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wait until we have an AI system that creates a new color. Can you imagine that? Creates a new color, and I'd go crazy. Can you even do that though with our eyes? I don't even know if humans can.
I don't know.
Because mantis, shrimp, they can see 16 different colors, where we just see 3.
We go from talking about synthetic voice to AI artwork and ended on mantis shrimp.
I don't know how many. Don't quote me on that. I forgot the exact number, how many colors they can see, but it's a lot. Where humans are just 3 colors.
Anyhow,
see, so.
You'll enjoy the episode I have coming up with Ben Covalis, so stay tuned for that. And of course, thank you as always for listening and watching. And if you are a subscriber to the Artificial Podcast, thank you as always for tuning in week by week. We very much appreciate it. Couple of reminders as we wind things down. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the Artificial Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, most notably on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Anchor.fm. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe and make sure to smash that button. Or no, it's smash
that notification bell.
No, smash the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. That's what it is. So if you're watching us on YouTube and feel so inclined to, and if you really like the Artificial Podcast and all of the great work that Brett and I do and want to show us some love even more, you can support us on Patreon by heading to patreon.com/theartificialpodcast. And, well, you get access to a lot of really neat things by becoming a Patreon subscriber. We may shout you out on the show to say thank you. You get access to bonus content, early access to our episodes, and a whole variety of different things. So make sure to go and check out our Patreon page. And if you want to become a part of our Discord community, head on over to theartificialpodcast.com, and there is a link to join our Discord. We haven't done a whole lot with it yet, but we really would like to. We just need more people a part of it.
Yeah, which is fine. It's brand new. Nobody's going to join it right away. So.
And you could be one of the first people to join the Artificial Podcast Discord. I'll give you a nice pat on the back. And make sure to follow the Artificial Podcast on Facebook and Twitter at The Artificial P. Again, if you want to listen to all of our episodes past up to now, you can go ahead and visit our website at theartificialpodcast.com to, learn more about Brett and I, take a look at our podcast vault, whatever you want to do. And last but not least, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You have no idea how important reviews are. They go a long way, especially on a platform like Apple Podcasts. So please, 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 if you enjoy what you hear and want to support us, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Anyhow, I think that's about all I got. Anything else, Brett?
Nope, I have nothing.
All right. Take care, stay safe, and we'll be back next week.
See you later, everybody.
Artificial
Intelligent voice recognition.
machine learning.
Robotic.
You've been listening to the Artificial Podcast with your host, Nick Myers.
Nick Myers.
To stay up to date with all of our latest episodes, you can subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. Or you can visit us on the web at www.theartificialpodcast.com. Until next time.